Okay, so Helen has just pressed the button that says record. So this session is now recording. If you're not happy to be recorded, then you probably don't want to be in the session because you might have your name or your image if you switch on your camera at some point. But if you'd like to do that later on, we will allow you to switch on your cameras so you can wave at other people who are doing the same thing as you are at the moment. So welcome to our meeting and welcome to the world of language teaching. Those of you who've just completed your training year have had a very complex time, and we all appreciate that. The positive thing you can think about is that the things you've had to resolve in that time will stand you in excellent stead for all the rest of your years of teaching. When those of us who weren't in COVID times did our training, it was much more straightforward in a way, still lots of work, but you've had to already overcome lots of things which will be good for you in the long run. Welcome to our ALL event. I'm going to tell you a little bit about ALL. The first thing is to say that we are a band of volunteers, all the people who you'll see from ALL here this evening. So if you can see on the screen Helen, and you can see Charlie and me and Veronica, we're all members of ALL and we're all volunteers who like to see other language teachers, to share things with them and to encourage them to meet each other, talk about things and find out what they have in common and how they can help each other out. That's the way ALL works. And for those of you who haven't heard the name before, ALL is the Association for Language Learning. I'm a trustee of that, and I'm also chair of ALL in the Northeast. That's where I work with Veronica, who teaches in the Northeast as well. But there are branches all over the country and other local groups. So Charlie works with the branch in Southwest of England, based in Bristol, and there are also branches in Birmingham and in Manchester, in Cambridge, and so on and so on. So you're becoming a language teacher, which is an amazing thing to be. Language teachers are exceptional. All teachers are exceptional, but language teachers are super exceptional because we do things that none of the other teachers sometimes even think about. Because our work is not just about knowledge and bits of information, it's also about humanity, people, communication, culture, and the whole of the world. So all of those things on the screen you can see at the moment make us unique. So welcome to the world of being unique. So when you are unique, you do need to get together with other people who are similarly unique. And that's why ALL exists, really. We're a membership association where everyone is involved in one way or another in the teaching and learning of languages. Most of our members are teachers in secondary and in primary schools, some in universities. We also have teacher trainers, we have publishers, and we have other people whose work is to do with encouraging language learners of all ages. This is a pressurized point of view, of course. Not everyone sees the importance of learning a language immediately. So we always have the task of trying to raise our profile and make that importance more generally known in the public area. But we do have friends in other associations and organizations who help us to do that. So ALL is just one of a bundle of partners, including cultural institutes, some governmental institutes, and some private organizations, and we all try to support each other. We know we can't do the work by ourselves, so we work together to do the things we need to. So there we are. We need each other because we need to be reminded about what it is we do and why it is we do it. There's lots of pressures on teachers in schools, some of them coming from senior leadership teams, some of them coming from inspectors, some coming from government, which means sometimes you can lose sight of what it is you're really trying to do, which in our case is to engage our young learners with the rest of the world, get them interested in how language works, how people think, how they behave, and traveling around the world, getting to know them. So we need to be part of something that reminds us of that, of our professional history. So we remember we're not making everything up for new, There have been language teachers since people started to speak and to write. So that's quite a long time ago, even before I was born. And we need also to be in touch with those people who do research to try and make sure that we're aware of what they're doing and see whether what they find out is useful to us in our particular context. Refreshment is a key word for me in this one, because when you meet up with other language teachers, particularly en présentiel, as they say in French, actually in a live event at a meeting or a conference or a workshop, that's when things really start to spark, when you meet people who agree with you or don't disagree with you quite, who've got different ideas or similar ideas. That's when you start to form projects and companionships that can last for the rest of your life. So people who you meet at AWL meetings, for example, very often become friends, either online or in person, because they've got so much they need to talk about to each other. So AWL is like a home. That's a little picture of a home down the bottom corner of the screen. AWL is a home for all of us who share this passion and interest in other languages, cultures, and people. So the AWL exists to support language teachers, and in that way to support language learners. So it's the Association for Language Learning, but we work through teachers. We do some events for learners as well. To find out about our events, you can look at the website. And if you're a member of AWL, you will get a weekly email message that tells you everything that's going on in the languages world. That's called AllNet. We have local events, which are either in networks and branches. That's for anybody, really. All of the sectors are represented there. And then we also have primary hubs, which are obviously specifically for primary teachers, but secondary teachers are very welcome to talk about issues that affect transition in particular. So there's a large program of events, many of them still at the moment online, because those have proved extremely useful to people, and some of them beginning to be in real life as well. They're advertised in the AllNet message and on the website, and those that are online are also very often advertised on the AWL London website that Helen looks after. Especially for ECTs, we have an event that we invented last year. At the request of people at this meeting, actually last year, they said they would like to have a regular informal event where they could just have a chat, catch up with each other, talk about any successes, or ask for solutions to particular issues they had. So this year we're moving that to the Thursday. So we're calling it Third Thursdays. You'll see those listed on the Eventbrite list that Helen manages, and we'll probably send you a link to the first one anyway, following on from this event as you've joined us this evening. So they're going to be on the third Thursday of the month, most months, September being an exception, will be on September the 16th rather than the 23rd. They'll be for just 3/4 of an hour at 8 p.m. to allow you to do some preparation beforehand or afterhand if you need to be doing that sort of thing. There we are. So that's the sort of thing we're going to be including. There's going to be a bit of chat, some sharing of things that have worked, and then some suggestions of games and things like that, that you can drop into your lesson and that you can vary according to your language or the age of your students. And then a bit of an announcement about anything new on the AWL website that we think is particularly interesting to you. You're all welcome to come to that. We invite trainees, ECTs, and indeed anybody else who feels like coming along. So they're just very pleasant, informal sessions that we hope will go well again this year as they did last. This is the particular web page on the website, which is for you. I'm going to put the link into the chat when I've finished speaking, just before I introduce Veronica. But this is the page which is for people in the first years of their teaching. And it's got a number of articles on it as you scroll down that page, which are particularly relevant to you. To help you to do that, to find out what AWL offers to you in particular, we also have a document, which I'll share with you a bit later on, which is called a shortcut. And it's on that page, on that web page. The idea of the shortcut is that it has a list of things that as an ECT you might be thinking about, and it points you to particular areas of the website where you can find resources or advice that'll help you. And also to some AWL resources that aren't on that website, but are on a wiki or a blog somewhere else. So I'll mention that to you again in just a moment too. So there it is. That's my reminder to do it. I will do it. Helen, just before we opened the meeting, mentioned City of Languages in Coventry, which is having a launch in October. And in our next issue of Languages Today, the magazine you can see on the screen at the moment, we have an article about that. So you'll be able to read about how they've gone about setting up that City of Culture and Languages. This magazine comes out once a term and is a member benefit. So if you join ALL, you'll get it every term, usually around about half-term time. And there is a sample on the website at the moment. If you want to have a look for it, you'll find that in the shop. That's free to download, obviously. And obviously, if you're not already a member of ALL and you would like to join at this point, that's the membership rate for people who are in training and for the ECT years, so 3 years altogether. And there is also a discount code, as you can see, so you can get 10% off that if you use that code at the bottom, especially for you, as you see, ECT10. That will get you your discount when you check out through the ALL shop. So this is how you could join ALL. The easiest way is to go to the website and to go through the membership feature there, but you could also ring them up, or you could email them and ask them to do something if you have a particular query about something else. If you want to follow ALL, those are our social media links. A lot of things go on, as you know, on social media as well at the moment, as well as on the website. That's me. Thank you very much for listening to me doing that. I will just show you now the shortcut, if I can find it. There it is. So this is what the shortcut document looks like. As you can see, it's not going to scroll, this it is. It's got a sort of heading on the left-hand side. So the ECT years, you might go to that page. The context of 2021 home learning. If you're still doing some of that with some of your students who are at home, then there's lots of advice there. Making the case for languages, the thing that we have to do constantly. There's your section about keeping up to date. Very important now that you're no longer with your trainers and your mentors who are talking to you about those sorts of things. You may be in a department where you don't get to talk to people very often. This is the area that will keep you up to date with those things. Lots of things there, including a new section of the website about decolonizing the curriculum. Here's your online opportunities and your event opportunities where you can find out about those. And that's the thing about the new webinar that we've just talked about, and Helen will be hosting for us again this year. So that's the bit from me. As I say, everyone involved in ALL, nearly everyone is a volunteer. We have a very tiny staff, and we're very glad that we have volunteers who are willing to lead events, talk about things they've experienced themselves, and share ideas, resources very generously. That's largely what our website is about nowadays, and also our events. So there's a question about decolonizing the curriculum. That's one I think we'll pick up a little bit later on. Laura, if I don't get back to it before the end, please remind me and we'll talk about it then. But I don't want to stop Veronica from having her full time. So I'm going to introduce you now to Veronica, who teaches, as I say, in the northeast of England in a school in Newcastle. As you can probably tell from her name, she's not from Newcastle originally. She is from, well, she'll probably tell you where she's from, but she's just been there because she's had a very exciting summer already, as she's been getting married. So this is her second big excitement of the summer, talking to you. Yeah. What more can you ask? So
I would say equally exciting.
Thanks for joining us once again, Veronica, and I'm passing over to you now.
Thank you. Let's see. Can you see the presentation? Yeah. Okay. Give us a second. There we go. So, welcome to this presentation on making a good start, my top tips for your first week as an early career teacher. As Steven said, my name is Verónica González Otero. I'm from the Cádiz region in the southwest of Spain. It's near Malaga and Seville, and I'm an English and MFL teacher. I currently teach in in Newcastle in the northeast, and in September, well, next week I'm starting like my new appointment as a second in MFL as well, so I'm very excited. That's my email address. If you've got any sort of questions or you want to email me, I think we would put the presentation on the website, so you'll be able to download it from there. And today's presentation, I've divided into 4 different sections. I'll be making a post and after every section, and then I'll answer any questions you may have, but feel free to interrupt as well. So the first section is before teaching starts, then your first and second lessons with each class, and finally a short beginner's recipe for behavior management. So before I start with the presentation, I would like you to write on the chat, what are you most looking forward to this September? And I'll have a look at the chat as I speak. So we go meeting the pupils, get to teach A-level. Like, it's always very, very exciting, the A-level part of it. Get to have term in one piece, very important as well. And having your own classroom, certainly, that's the thing I would say I've missed the most this year. Experimenting with classroom activities. Yep. Feedback on the first lesson. Building a relation with the students. Yeah, in this presentation, I'll give you a couple of tips for that. Getting back in the classroom after the summer break. Oh, teaching Latin, very exciting. I love Latin. That was my favorite subject in A-level. And having a bit more freedom, that's definitely a big one. Yeah, okay, so the routine. Yeah, I like the routine, but you know, in the world of teaching, that's gonna be a bit difficult to have a routine. But yeah, just having your different things that you do on a daily basis, that's definitely something we're all looking forward to. So the first section is to help you prepare before teaching starts. I've been in Spain for like a few weeks now and I've forgotten my English. The key idea of this section is that you have to be professional. You always need to follow the code of conduct for teaching professionals in the UK, and then decide what sort of teacher you want to be. My main piece of advice is that you do not try to be somebody who you are not. I know some teachers who, for example, don't like talking about their life at all, but I'm the type of person who likes sharing different things that happen to me, like with my students, or different anecdotes, or tips for when, like, I've traveled to a different country, but obviously within, being 100% professional. But this is the person I am, and I cannot change it. Every year start by saying, oh, I'm gonna be like very serious at the beginning, and then I'll start talking. But I'm not like that. I'm very lively, I'm very enthusiastic, and I just cannot change that. So just be true to yourself and do whatever makes you feel comfortable, as long as you're being professional. And another thing is that you should not worry too much about being by yourself, because teachers support each other. And as an early career teacher, you're not responsible for everything. You would have a line manager, a head of department, or somebody to go to whenever you've got any questions. You're in a very, very good position at the moment, and you never should feel uncomfortable about asking any questions, or be scared of what people might think. The next thing is that you familiarize. So the first step would be familiarize yourself with the school calendar. And my one piece of advice is that you bear in mind that October half-term holidays don't always coincide in schools. So bear that in mind when planning your holidays. Also, I suggest that you read and highlight relevant policies from the Department of Education, as well as your school and your faculty or department, because they may vary from the institution where you did your teacher training. And I've got the link here for a PDF for the induction for early career teachers. Feel free to read through that later. Another important thing is get your stationery sorted. I know that's, for some of us, that's our favorite part. Locating your teaching rooms, the nearest toilets, emergency escape, etc. Another very exciting thing, and I know some of you would have probably asked to go over the summer to your school, is to decorate your classroom if you have one and are allowed. I think, as I saw in the chat, many people are very excited about that, especially after, in my case, for example, I've been every single period, I had to go to a different classroom and a different part of the building. And I couldn't wait to just have my own classroom with my materials, my equipment, have everything sanitized properly, and all of the prompts for students in the walls and stuff. Also, make sure that your classroom materials are accessible if you can. What I like to do is to put a tiny table next to me, next to the teacher desk, with some hand sanitizer, some notebooks in case you've got the unexpected students that joins in later, or the student who was absent, and then they would have their book ready, textbooks, dictionaries, glue sticks. Always have lined paper and spare pens as well. I know it's an expectation in schools for students to bring pens, but you'll be very surprised when the beginning of the year starts. Also, I suggest that you work out which system of organization works best for you. I know some people love having an electronic version of everything with reminders, or they use their phones. But again, I'm coming back to being true to yourself. That's not how I work. That's not how I operate. And I just can't get around because I need to have a piece of paper with me all the time. Even when I'm on an all-any event, I'm always taking notes of ideas. I'm more like a pen and paper person. So the way, the key idea is that what works for other people may not work for you. And as I'll show you in a second, if you choose a published planner, for example, like the Oxford one you've got in the center there, remember to personalize it so that it works for you and for your school. So this is the system that I use. I always use 3 different things. First of all, I use my teaching planner, where I've got the different periods, and I write down what I'm going to do with every class. I know these days using PowerPoint, some people may just forget about it, but you always need to have, as I'm going to say in a second, a plan A, plan B, and plan Z if necessary. So it's always good to have written down on that piece of paper, on top of having the electronic version, in case the computer doesn't work, what you're going to do with each class. Also, I have a planner where I've got a weekly view. I don't like the planners where you've got 1 page by itself, because then I need to visualize everything, and on Monday I like to see everything as a week. And finally, I got these. This is the typical what's on the menu that people buy to organize their meals. But I like using it because it's a bit bigger of an A4 size, and it's got the shopping list on the right hand side. So on the right hand side, I write just the key things that I need to do, loads of things. And then on the center, instead of having afternoon, morning, afternoon, break, or snack and dinner, I just use it for different days of the week. And I have my top 7 things that I want to do on that day. So the first row would be for the Monday, the Tuesday, and so on. And then I will write down the 7 key things that I need to do on that day before leaving school. And then because there will always be more than 7 things that you need to do, the ones that are not so important, then I would put it on the right hand side as a list. But the lists make me a bit anxious because I need to cross it out, then I cannot see it properly. But this way is very visual. You've got lots of space, and I think it's a nice way of crossing it out and feeling that you've accomplished a lot, especially when you've got those difficult days. So on top of that, the way I organize my planner. So last year, with during lockdown, I had a bit more time. So I got this bullet planner kit from WH Smith, and it's just basically like a notebook with a few dots and page numbers. So if you use like a blank book, this is like an A5 size, and I like A5 size because I can put it in my bag every day. So what I did was to add like an elastic band to keep it closed. Then I split it into like weekly views. And then I like going over the top all the time with like glitter and stickers and post-it notes. So I just left like the back of it for lots of stickers and post-it notes. These are like, my students know, like at the end of the year, I know it's typical to get your teachers like some wine or I don't know, champagne or whatever. My students know me very well, and they always get me like candles or post-it notes or stationery. And another important thing is when whenever you get anything on an email, you're saying, oh, you've got this important thing, or parents' evening, school holidays, staff training days, it's very important for me to write it down on my planner instead of just having the emails. I'm very organized, I'm very perfectionist, so having unread emails makes me very anxious. So whenever it's just a tiny email, like important day to remember, I just write it straight away on the planner. And then I right click and then press as unread. Also, this doesn't go like with, this won't apply to a lot of you, but some schools like mine ask us to have a teaching file. And in that teaching file, I always keep like a copy of my timetable, my duty days, on-call time, school policies, the SEND register with advice and contacts for support, schemes of work, individual class information. I like to track absolutely everything because it helps me when it comes to the underpinning performance data, or predict end of key stage 3 or 4 predictions. So I always track the attendance, the attitude, the homework, and the grades, so low stake testing or summative assessments. And also I find it might not apply to you, but sometimes when dealing with some sort of like potential complaint of, oh, my son or daughter are getting like too many like detentions, or whenever a head of year asks you, or a parent asks you like how they are doing, or why have they got detention, then you'll be able to see on paper what happens. I know some of you may have a very good memory, but I don't. I need to write everything down. So, whenever a student misbehaves, even like I always tell the students, like, even if you blink, I will notice that and I would track it, because it's very important. It helps you as well not to be biased. I know sometimes when you need to put like a grade from like 1 to 5 about behavior, for example, then you're like, oh yeah, it can be a bit subjective, but having that in front of me makes it like virtually like almost 100% objective for me. And I always like, I am very, very fair as a teacher. So, if I gave a warning to the student, then I would say, okay, you've got a 4 at the moment, which is good, but in order to be very good, then you would have to like, have every single day, like not a single warning or whatever. And, in terms of homework as well, it helps you. I also check, like when I check the books, I also track it. So it helps you to see the improvement of students like very, very thoroughly. You can also have like templates for lesson observations and feedback, appraisal information, and any sort of like CPD courses. But it's only obviously entirely up to you and whatever your school requires. And I always put it, I've never found these in England like with so many pages. This contains about like 80 like Polly Pockets, and I don't like using binders because they break all the time. I don't know what my issue is with binders, so I get them in Spain once a year, and I really like them because it's like a notebook, like a display one. You can find them, like I know they're like about 20 pages in in Poundland and these shops, but this one is like a proper like big one for the whole year. Okay, so the second section is your first lesson with each class. I'm going to check the chat in case there are any questions. Steven, if you want to mute yourself, if anybody has came up with any sort of questions for the first section.
I didn't make a note of any particular questions. There were some comments and people agreeing, saying that they use already.
Yeah.
But I didn't see a particular question.
Okay. There was someone that mentioned to me just, Veronica, that they are very stressed. Someone mentioned in a private message, very stressed about starting a new job. So any tips along the way for kind of taking the stress out of it? I'm sure we're going to get that with all of this, but
Yes,
I think stress is the big name.
yeah, okay, perfect. I think I'll probably go through that on, I think the tips on the second and third section might help them, but
Okay.
I'm pretty sure we'll have plenty of time afterwards to discuss. And Charlie, I love your advice about make friends with the IT team. I'd suggest you make friends with absolutely everyone in school. Apart from, as you will see in the last section, apart from teaching, my second passion is cooking, and I love baking and I like cooking anything. So whenever it's always, people are really nice around school, like in general. I've never, people have their bad days, but everybody is generally nice in the education environment. But if you can, I suggest that 3 people to be the nicest with would be the IT team, because there will always be some IT issues. Then probably the people in the canteen. I don't eat in the school canteen, but I'm pretty sure that you will get bigger portions if you're nice to them. And then the cleaners, I would say, because the other people are in your room when you're not there. So, try to be nice to everybody. I always bring, whenever, I know, for example, the IT team has gone way beyond what was expected in my school during COVID times. So and one of them stayed with me on a non these days that we had to come for the children who's key workers, and he stayed there for a couple of hours showing me how to do something, because I was associate head of year 11 as a maternity cover last year, and there was some stuff on the VLE that I had no clue about how to do. So he stayed there for 2 hours, and then obviously I brought him a massive Spanish cake. So it's always nice to be friends with everyone. So second section, your first lesson with each class. So on the first lesson with every single year group, you need to expect things to be 100% unpredictable. You need to have a plan A, a plan B, and as I said, a plan Z if necessary. And you always need some flexible backup activities to drop in if necessary. That doesn't only apply to the first lesson, but throughout the school academic year. And for me, being part of the All-NE community has helped me a lot. I usually pack my lessons with activities and resources, but there is the odd day where the projector doesn't work, or students finish faster than you expected. So these activities that we went through during the first Fridays, and I'm pretty sure we'll keep developing during the third Thursdays, are very, very useful. I always write down everything, and so it's I strongly encourage you to become a member and to join us on the third Thursdays. And they will always be useful. Also, things that I see yearly is things like I don't have a pen, or we don't have enough books for students because we had some old books but the new ones haven't arrived yet, or the glue sticks haven't arrived either. So a very important thing is that you're ready for that, and I'll show you how I do it every year at the beginning. Second thing, first impressions are very important. So on the first day of lessons, something that really helps me to relax a little bit and not to be really anxious is to have I'm also an attention seeker. So I love students to just pay attention 100% to me and what I have to say. So I don't start with a PowerPoint. I know some people may feel more comfortable being in the comfort zone by having a PowerPoint displayed on the board, but I like to have projector off, my name written on the board, and just pay full attention to me to avoid distractions. Of course, being Spanish and having my 2 Spanish surnames, that's something that starts being, part of that cultural capital. And always there is a question of, Miss, why do you have 2 surnames? Some students will know, some students won't. So that would be my first introduction to Spanish culture. Then I always like to take the register within the first, like maybe like after 10 minutes of the lesson having started, because there would always be the old student who gets lost, or they've been speaking to the head of year. So I always wait for about 10 minutes. I take the register and write down the pronunciation of students' names, because I a lot of the time find them very difficult to remember. And then I go through the school's expectations, which they would have gone through there in the form time, but also my classroom expectations. So I always, from day one, meet and greet the students at the door. I have a copy of the seating plan with me, and then I put it on that, teaching file. I show them to the students just with students' name, no any sort of like information. So I hold it in front of myself. The students know where they are sat. Then I go through the school behavior and expectations policy in general, and the classroom rules in particular, as I've just said. And I think the key ingredient to succeed on your first days is that you are very firm and consistent, but fair. And always, that's a key for like teaching. Always follow through on what you say. Because we're very busy throughout the day, sometimes you might like threaten the students and say, well, I'm gonna contact your parents if you keep misbehaving. But then a lot of teachers actually don't do that. And then they go home, and then on the next day, the students like would know that whatever the teacher says, because students are like, they are sponges. And if they see that you do not follow through, they will keep pushing your limits. So in my case, for example, what I tell them is, I know we're very busy, but I think sometimes just like a 1 or 2 minute phone call can do, like it would be enough. So what I tell the students, like, imagine I've got a very busy day and I say to them, oh, I'm going to ring your parents. Like sometimes it's not lying to them, but kind of like going around a little bit. So imagine you forgot, or well, I wouldn't forget because I would have it written down, but imagine you don't have the time to do that. And then the student says, oh, you didn't ring. Then you're like, oh, yes, I was just waiting to see how you're going to behave in this lesson today. And then I'll ring if not. So, sometimes like my students know that if I say something, I would do it. If I say I'm going to ring the parents, they know. And sometimes they even like come to you. They would be like, I found it a bit strange when I started like working in England. And the student would say, when I would say, oh, I'm going to ring your parents, they would say, Miss, I promise you I'll be perfect. If I don't receive any sort of like warning, if you don't give me any warning or tell me off or anything, can you not phone them? And I always say, well, we will see. I never make empty promises. I don't say, okay, that's fine. No, I say, we will see. And believe it or not, students, a lot of them are going to change their behavior massively because they know that I would follow through. And the same as the negative phone call, I always make positive phone calls as well. So whenever, students' behavior or in terms of like homework engagement, the attitude of the student changes, then I ring home, and parents are really grateful for these phone calls. So I always tell my students that I've got 2 main expectations in the classroom. The first one is respect towards their classmates, myself, and themselves. And the second one is that I want them to work really hard and make the most of the time. We can have fun, but they need to work hard. And my weekly expectation from them is homework. So because I always follow through and I'm always firm and consistent, on the first day after you've introduced yourself, given them the expectation, say, well, my expectation is homework. I would set, so imagine my first lesson with year 9 is on a Wednesday. The second is on a Friday, and the third one is on a Monday. I would always set the homework on a Wednesday. I will remind them on Friday and put it on the PowerPoint slide so that I don't forget, and then remind them again on Monday so that it's due on Wednesday. So I always set, except for A-level, for Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4, I set out one piece of homework per week, and then get set on a Wednesday, for example, reminded on Friday, reminded on Monday, and then do it the next day. The students know that that's the expectation. And if they don't bring it, in my school, we have a praise code system. So I would just give them like one planner comment. So in my school, 3 planner comments would be a 1-hour detention. So that would put them on 1 planner comment already. And then, if I agree with parents or the year team, then they might want to stay after school to do the homework with me. So for them, on the first day, when I'm like being super nice, saying, oh, you know, I'm Spanish, I'm from this region, then I would tell them my expectation is homework. And I would tell them, can you please get your planners and write down your first piece of homework? And obviously they start whinging. I've never had a class where students haven't complained so far in the past, I don't know, 5 years. And then they would say, I would say to them, okay, so your first piece of homework is to write, to create a name tag similar to the ones that I'm going to show you. And then you can find some examples on the virtual learning environment. That's where we upload the homework for the students. And the deadline is this day, so you have a full week to make it. And then obviously that piece of homework is a bit selfish, is for me to get to know like the students and to remember their names. I'm very visual, a very visual person. So sometimes when they show me, like I remember the face and then I associate it to the name tag. But then, you know, otherwise I struggle so much. So these are some examples. Some students like to go like over the top. Some students do like a very hard work and they get very excited about their first piece of homework. It's super nice for them. They can use it for other subjects as well. So you can have students like Millie, or you can have students like Lucas there in the center, and that would be completely fine. I always tell them that's fine, as long as I can see it from the distance, then that's okay. And then another important thing, so the last 2 tips from me would be getting to know your students. I always do on the first day a student interest survey where I ask them, for example, what they like to do in their free time, what things they are afraid of, or what their favorite food is, the favorite music, or the people in class that they would like to work with or they would not like to work with. Is completely so, and nobody would see their answers. I'm interested, obviously they need to write the name. So question 1 is write your name, but then it helps me. I take them home and I go through them and it helps me plan my lessons as well. So if a student tells me that they like this specific, you know, sports that is not very common, then I include that on my, you know, when we're doing the free time activities topic, then I would include that sports over there. So it helps me. And also it helps me when it comes to like grouping students or working on the seating plan. Because sometimes the head of years would tell you, you know, this student cannot sit with whomever for whatever reason that they don't tell you. So don't feel offended, because sometimes they won't tell you the reason. But then you can sort of like tell. And also, some people like to do icebreaker activities. I don't do them too much. What I've done when I've got smaller classes is a spider's web game, by which I would hold like the first bit of the yarn, and then I would say a sentence in the target language. For example, saying, or I like to do this in my free time, or this summer I did this, depending on, you know, the level of the students. And then I would throw it to another student, and then the student would hold it as well. So I would still be holding it. The student would hold the other extreme bit, and then they would say another sentence. Ideally, they need not to like repeat what has been said, and then they would throw it to somebody else and so on. And then at the end, you would have like a big spider web. So students would sit some sort of like in a circle. And then at the end, you need to remember who threw it at you, and you need to remember what the person said. So you can adapt it, but it's a very nice thing because you end up like creating something and students love it. And finally, I think it's very important that you let the students get to know you a bit more. So I like to, some people use the 2 truths and a lie about themselves. And I like to ask the students to ask me 1 question per group of like 4 people. So in the end, you would have about, you know, 6 or 7 questions to answer in the target language ideally. And you'll be surprised that, you know, at first I thought, oh my God, what are they gonna ask me? But they're not that strange, the questions. Sometimes they're a bit odd, but nothing like safeguarding concerning wise. Any questions about this section?
Okay, I've got a few this time, Veronica. First of all, Cecilia wanted to ask a question. I don't know, Helen, can you unmute Cecilia so she can ask her question? While that's just happening, there was a question about whether you would use the name tags activity for every year group.
Yes, I do. I'm really bad with names. I barely remember my friends' names. Yes, I definitely do it. Maybe for like A level, the students love it. The students would not think, oh my God, what is she doing about the name tag? Sometimes in sixth form, they would come with a sticker already or with badges. But yes, I like doing it. In sixth form, if you've got, let's say like 6, 7 students, and that I might not do it, but yeah, certainly with every single year group, and every single year group, they love it, because I always show them you know, what other year groups do, and they try to make it better. So for me, everything is like a competition. So yes.
Thank you. Next one, a question just in there about whether you would use any target language for your classroom instructions in the first week of term.
Yes, so from the beginning, every single year group, with a meeting and greeting at the door, I would just say, hola, ¿qué tal? Like, hi, how are you? Or bonjour, ça va? And I would just wait and see what they reply. Depending on their response, I would just, I don't use, like, for example, it's like when you are teaching, I, for example, don't explain grammar in the target language, whereas I do speak like Spanish or French, like through the rest of the classroom. So at the beginning, I would only use the target language for like introducing myself a little bit, but then I would translate it. For example, for the student survey, the interest survey, I always ask the question in Spanish. And before I start, I tell them, I'm gonna start, you know, asking, I say Spanish because that's what I've been teaching, like for the, you know, the past 3 years, I've only taught Spanish. In September, like I'm studying French as well. But so I would ask them, I would say to them, I'm gonna ask a question in Spanish. Hold on, don't start like whinging and, you know, breathing loud. Hold on. Then I would translate it to English. Like I would wait for 2 seconds. So I would always like do the questions in Spanish, wait for 2 seconds, and then translate it into English. And students can start picking up so for example, if I ask them like, what is your favorite free time activity? Just by knowing like the word free time, tiempo libre, then they would know, oh, that's probably what she's asking. And students like it. The students are not reluctant at all at the beginning. Some of them might not, obviously might be like, oh, but if you always translate it to English, you need to show them, you know, to be patient with the language, because that's how the brains need to like start working. And then when it comes to the school expectations, for example, that's something that I always do in English. So I always tell them, for example, the main expectation for me is respeto. And then I ask them, oh, do you know what that means, the word respeto? So I would throw like individual words or short sentences.
Yeah, great. So you mentioned expectations there, and there was a question about whether you would also repeat your classroom expectations for Key Stage 4 students.
Yes, I remind Key Stage 4, but also Key Stage 5 of the expectations, especially the homework one, because some students in sixth form, they think that this is some sort of like Riverdale show where they just go around school and, you know, they're gonna be relaxed and they don't need to hand in homework. So yes, they because in my school, they don't have any sort of like punishment for not doing their homework. So yes, so I think it's very important, the expectations for every single year group.
Yeah.
And if you find it useful, I would always put like a display at the back of the classroom, just saying, you know, expectation 1, respect, expectation 2, you know, hard work, and then I would put homework, weekly homework in brackets.
Yeah. So you talked about homework earlier, and there was a question about whether you have a schedule yourself for bookmarking, so you can keep up with your marking.
Yes, I do that as well, depending obviously on, it depends on your school policy. So I would say before people start like stressing out, I would probably wait until the third Thursday, and then maybe we can discuss that, so that, you know, because it's gonna be different for each school. Some schools, and it also might be different with COVID. For example, my school, you know, at the beginning we were sort of like, we had to quarantine the books for 48 hours. So I would just wait and see. but in normal times, I always like check the books. So something I liked, well, this is gonna be a tricky one. I know I'm gonna sound like not very good, but I'm gonna be brutally honest here, because that's what, you know, that's the person I am. So I trained in Spain, and when I came to England, I was not told how to mark books or what the expectations were. They were not very clear. So I used to take books home and mark every single colon, semicolon, and spelling mistake, and absolutely everything, even if there was like a blank space. Yeah. And I started to hate marking books. And to this day, I hate marking books. Like, I hate it. This is the thing about teaching that I dislike the most, yet the thing that I find the most useful. So what I do now to get away with, like, you know, the marking books, it was just because it was too much hassle to be carrying books around. And then my boyfriend he's a teacher as well, but he's not very happy with me bringing like school books to the bedroom and stuff. So what I decided to do, and it's worked really well for me, is to ask them to hand in the homework weekly on a piece of paper. So if it's like a piece of writing, I will mark it on a piece of paper, I will bring it in a Polly Pocket, and then bring it back to class, and then they would, the students would like stick it in their books. So by doing that, that saved me a lot of time on marking books. Then I didn't have to take the books home, and then I would be marking, I would be establishing, for example, every Monday, I'm gonna stay for like a couple of hours after school, or I'm gonna come before school. I like to do, I know some people like to do like the books in chunks. I like to do like one class at a time. Like, I cannot do 5 books and then come back. It's just, oh, it drives me crazy. I like to do like the whole lot. So for example, I like doing it after school. So I say on a Monday after school, I'm gonna go through the books. And because most of the work would already be marked, because I would do like live marking when, you know, if COVID allows it, like, you know, I would just go around and mark things as I go, then there is not too much to do. And literally in half an hour or, you know, 45 minutes, you can go through a whole like class.
Yeah, thank you. Cecilia, I think you can now ask a question.
Oh, Cecilia said it was a mistake. Her little one pressed the hands up.
Oh, no. Oh, right. Okay. There was one more about table layout, but maybe that's one we can talk about on a Thursday, because yeah, there was someone who wanted to find out about whether you have a particular table layout.
When I first started, I liked doing like a U shape, and I would see students all alternating boy and girl in alphabetical order at the beginning. I know it's very like traditional, but I like doing it in that way because I'm really bad with names. So as I go through the register, I can, you know, link the face to the student. But with COVID, it's not allowed in my school, so we need to have like rows of 2s, so like 3 chunks in the classroom. So it depends really. I think you're right, Stephen. Maybe we can leave it for Thursday to see what the school allows us to do.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And I've just seen somebody saying some schools use Team now and OneNote for homework. Totally agree. It's a lot quicker. We use, for example, the VLE, and then you can give students verbal feedback, and I found it extremely useful in terms of like developing oral skills, for example, the speaking, production skills, for example, the speaking or the writing, because you can give a lot more feedback, quality feedback, than in class. The problem is that sometimes students do not listen to that feedback, and we don't have a way of knowing if the student is hearing that feedback or not. So I think it's always important to have also a piece of like written feedback, whether it is, for example, during lockdown, the way I've done it is electronically via email or via the VLE again. And it's good because you can like copy a few ideas. So if you've got an extended piece of writing, then you can just copy a few ideas and copy and paste. So that saves you a lot of time. And I also have like Megan asking how often I would recommend collecting the books to mark. I think it really depends on the school. On the school policy. I do it like once a month or once per half term, but just because I would have been collecting the homework like on a weekly basis. and I know how the student is performing. That doesn't mean that you need to mark that piece of homework like weekly. It could be like a worksheet, but at least you would know what sort of questions the students are leaving blank or what sort of questions they're struggling with. Okay, so I'll move on to the third section. It's a bit shorter. It's about your second lesson with each class. So I always like to follow a traffic light system. I'll show you that in a second. The first thing I do is I meet and greet them at the door. Then I hand out the new books or a piece of paper if you don't have the books. And I would tell them what it is expected from them. As I said, again, no PowerPoint presentation, nothing, just paying attention to me. That would be my second session. I know some people like to get it done on the first day, but what I found is that you don't have enough time to do your presentation and the books on the same lesson. So I much rather the students practice, with a survey, some key vocabulary, than just being rushing through the books. And also, honestly, usually, I don't think I've ever had a year when on the first day I had my stickers, my glue sticks, the books and the worksheets that they need. So it's very important that as soon as you get your books, you show the students, you model what it is that they need to do. So I always take a book myself. So I always have a book already made. And then I have another book, a blank book like they would, and then I would go through the different steps with them. The reason why I have that spare book is because some students would fall behind, so they can always borrow it, or and they can stick it in. On that day, for the students that have been absent, somebody that finishes quicker would make the book for them, because I like everybody to have, after the first session, the books ready. So I model what they need to do. I like to initiate. I know some teachers absolutely love circulating across the classroom. I don't know if I'm being just lazy or very Spanish here. I've never had a teacher in Spain giving us the worksheet like on the hand. I would literally, just in chunks, like in three, like in rows, I would just give them a few copies and say, just take one and pass the others to handle the worksheets. I think people probably during COVID may have done that. And for me, that's the most effective thing. But whatever it is that works for you, that's it. And very, very, very important, because I'm very excited. I get very excited and I just give them a couple of sheets because I see that most of them are finished. Very important. Provide one sheet at a time. Do not give them more than one piece of paper. You might think, yes, they can cope with that. There will be the odd student that sticks the things in the wrong place, and then you have to say, oh, that's fine, but on the inside you're like, oh my god, now every single day we're gonna have to be reminding them that that's on the other side of the book. Anyway, one at a time, and then circulate around the classroom offering support, and then encourage a teamwork learning environment. As I said, I work with a traffic light system. I create a routine. I use it for like routines, for time management, for differentiation activities. So my students know that the activities would be in yellow, red, amber, green, or like purple, as a starter, or during the lesson. Then also I use a traffic light system to show for students to show me how confident they are with their learning. And then I also develop a system of hands up if or when finished, and if they've got any sort of questions, whatever it is, that your school allows. I'm speaking just about what my school lets us do. I do not like when students are like miss, or interrupting it. My lessons are very interactive, so I need them to just put their hand up and be quiet. And also, I use, like, in terms of like when I ask students how comfortable or confident they feel with something I've explained or we've gone through, I have like a key ring and then 3 cards, a red, a yellow, and a green one. And then those students it's an easier way for students, and they feel more comfortable when they don't understand something, to just lift a card and tell me, how confident they feel. It doesn't work with some groups. I remember I made these cards with my dad in Spain. It was because I'm very bad with cutting things and scissors. So my dad helped me making them. And then I remember my first year, a year 9 class, bottom set, the students decided to vandalize them. And I obviously didn't have a massive go at them. I just told them off, gave them, a sanction. But deep inside, I was feeling like gutted, because sometimes you're gonna go to your class, have, your super nice stationery or your equipment or everything that, a game that you've created, and then some students will spoil it for the class. And unfortunately, I had to like stop using them, or, the same like with whiteboards or things. You need to see, until the students get used to it, what things, I know it's gonna be awkward, but like a shield for yourself. Like for me, that really hurt me, and I'm like, I'm not using these cards anymore. So I made normal cards myself, like, because they were like with foam, they were like really good ones. So anyway, so for the first lesson, when they are like filling in their books, like with second lesson, the step 1 for them would be sticking in their sheets, and then help their partner if they need support. And then to keep them, students always need to be doing something. So on the first lesson, when they are just sticking things in, then you can just ask them, okay, your second step is to write the page numbers 1 to 40 on the top right or left corner of each page, front and back. And you show them how to do it, because some of them may not understand where you want the numbers. And the number thing is not just to keep them entertained or busy. The number thing is, for me, when I give them feedback, for example, I mark sometimes like, let's say 5 pages. And then I ask the student, please go back to page 20 and correct and add 3 examples of verbs in the preterite tense. So these page numbers help you when it comes to giving them feedback. And then the last step for them is I ask them to learn like 7 to 10 new words from the vocab list at the back of their books. So that sheet is ready at the beginning of the year for them, so that whenever they finish an activity, they've got a vocab list to go to and expand. And this is like your plan B in case you don't have books. I have like from the big trays of paper, I just put 1 tray for each class, and then I put line paper. And on the first days, I always use those line papers, for example, for the students to write the survey. So the key thing is to establish and follow your normal classroom routine, whatever it is that works for you. So for me, I always have the meet and greet. The students would have their planner and their pencil cases ready on their hands before coming to the classroom. And then the books would be handed out. I know some teachers like to put the books on the table. I like to put the books, like I have a student rota on the wall. So every other week, the student names change. So for every class, 3 students would be handing out the books. And they know that on those 2 weeks, they need to be really prompt to the lesson, and they need to just come in and straight away hand out the books. And that goes for every single student throughout the year. And then when we finish the register, then we start over. Then the students will write the date and the title, and they know that they should not leave any gaps on the books. Personally, I think they look really bad because it looks like incomplete work. And finally, the students, I would always be ready with the date and the title, and also the starter on the board. I put the date and the title on a whiteboard because some students might be a bit slower, and as you know, some students may not have written the date and the title. No matter how conscientious you are as a teacher and how much you're on top of the work, there will be the day that a student has not written the date and the title. So I always like to have it on the board, and then also on the PowerPoint presentation. So the last section is really, really brief, but I'm going to have a look at the chat in case there are any questions.
I think maybe just carry on for the time being, Veronica. We'll take the question.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so the last section is very brief, is my beginner's recipe for behavior management. The key ingredients for this recipe are 7. First, to be firm, fair, and consistent. Then stick to the relevant behavior policy on your school. Always follow through. Know your students. This is a difficult one when you start in your career. At least I found it difficult. Start on a clean slate every day. You'd be surprised that sometimes students really have like amnesia on what happened the day before. And you might still think, oh my God, they threw a glue stick across the classroom. But always start on a clean slate, because you are a role model for them. My advice is to track everything or anything odd that happens on a certain day in terms of like behavior. You know, if you notice anything strange, just, you know, put it on CPOMs for the safeguarding team. And the most important thing for me is to show your students that you care. We are all in this, you know, job because we love and we care. We love languages and we care for the education of young people. So, you know, the method is very simple. Step 1, mix all the ingredients together repeatedly for the next 40 years or less years for some of us. Second step, to be open-minded and stay humble throughout the entire process. And finally, never, ever, ever lose your enthusiasm and your passion for teaching and learning your language. Some days are going to be difficult, but it will always be worth it. So as I always like to, you know, remind myself when I've got a difficult day, be the change that you wish to see in the world. I've got some like top 3 further reading suggestions here. First one being the any website, especially the trainee teachers, ECT year section, how to protect your well-being and advice and guidance for language teachers. So thank you very much. And if you've got any questions, you can just ask them now or feel free to email me at any time.
Thank you. So, there was a clap there from Charlie. Everyone else is still muted. I think we'll switch people on shortly, I hope. So yes, thank you again, Veronica, for joining us and for delivering that session with the same energy, which obviously you've come back from holiday with. And the thing about enthusiasm is definitely the one of the hardest ones. We are in this all together. We do want to convey our enthusiasm to our learners, so we've got to make sure we retain our own, however that might be. But that's one of the things that being a member of AWL can remind you of, because when we meet up, we do share things, as with you, Veronica, to reinvigorate us and remind us what we're all here for.
Yeah.
So thank you such a lot. We've got one or two questions coming in at the moment. We realize that we've now run over our hour. So if people are having to leave, then please don't feel you have to stay. Thank you very much for coming. There's some very nice comments coming in for Veronica that I'm sure she'll read at her leisure later on. Yeah. But there was a question just went past then that I missed. What was it about?
It was the question, if you didn't have your own classroom, what would you change?
Do you mind me just interrupting while you're doing that? Can I enable people's videos so that people can show their faces and I can take a picture, but still carry on as you are? But yeah. Right.
So this is Helen's favourite moment. Helen loves taking the photo. So if you can just open your camera, if you're not open already, then she will manage that with a skill which she has developed.
I know you've answered it, Stephen and Helen, but people are asking about the PowerPoint and a survey, etc. So anything that we can share will be shared, as Stephen said, I think, on the website and the link via Eventbrite.
Indeed.
I'll send, I mean, everybody has registered via Eventbrite. My idea is that tomorrow evening, hopefully by tomorrow evening, we'll have sorted things out and we can send you links to the video and anything else that Veronica offers. Because I know you've given us the PowerPoint before, haven't you, Veronica?
Yeah, that's the one I emailed you,
Yeah, Layla, you should be able to turn on now. I think Helen has enabled it.
I've enabled, oh, right, enable. Yeah, so now you can unmute yourselves and you can do everything now.
I recognise some lovely faces there. Great to see you here.
So lovely to see you.
I might show on mute the camera.
Oh, there you
go.
Oh, well.
I'm about to take the pictures, so if people would like to just keep it on for the moment, then I'll tell you when I've taken the picture. If you're we've got 2 for the price of 1 there with Sanya.
Oh, and Alexandra, yay.
So I'll take a picture now and then I'll go on to page 2 and take a picture there. And you don't know which side you're on, so keep smiling all the time if you don't know. So I'm doing page 1 now, my page 1, 1, 2, 3. Is that Darwin there?
Yeah, sorry about that.
We've got Darwin involved as well. So that was page 1. And I'm now going on to page 2. We've got Glenn at the top there. Glenn, lovely to see you, Glenn, all the way from Canada. There we go.
Always great to be here, Helen. Thank you so much.
Lovely to see you. I'm happy now. Thank you, everybody.
And I think Doug has been multitasking there. Have you been making loads of notes as well, Doug? See you with your book.
Charlie, I think there was a question, right, about if you don't have your own classroom.
Yes.
So this year, so I've got an eye condition by which I cannot lift any weight because the retin falls down. So I cannot, I always go around with a tiny trolley as if I was an air hostess around school. But if you can carry a bag, I suggest you have like a big bag, and I literally just put in the, in my school, we left the books in the classroom where we taught. So I had like a bag with the books in that classroom. And in there, I just get a couple of spare pens and a couple of glue sticks. What I would do is to ask students, for example, for the sheets. I just find it a bit of like too much use of the time sticking things in. So I would just have like one day where we're gonna stick everything in, like, maybe on that Thursday, on the last period 6, at the end of the day, on the last 10 minutes, we just stick everything in. So I would just bring the glue sticks on that day for every class. So I will literally just carry with me line paper and a couple of pens and just maybe one glue stick, but that's it.
Yeah, I would also say one of the things that I found when I had to move around was the grammar that I had on the wall, I turned into like laminated chat sheets. This was long before knowledge organisers and chatty mats and all of that. But I just made a laminated version of my wall so that I had that with me, because you forget often some of the things you're referring to are on your classroom walls. So try and make a transferable kind of model of that as well. There was another question as well about when it's a strange one, because it's about whether you are still an NC, whether it's ECT or NQT. I believe, Judith, you may be able to join in with this, but I think if you started it in January 2020, you are on the traditional route for what was the original NQT. And it's only those starting now are ECTs. That was Paula, I think, asked that question. So I believe that. But check with your NQT mentor when you get in to school. But I'm pretty sure you're just on the standard 1-year route for that. Gosh, everyone's gone quiet now.
Yeah, there were a couple of questions I'm reading now. There was one from like Laura asking if you've got a class with plenty of SEND pupils where most of them have autism and ADHD, would you still do the survey during the first lesson? Yes, I do it. I do it on the first lesson. Some students might not want to reply because they don't need to. They just need to write an answer. So I said to them, I say to them, there is no right or wrong answer. If you don't want to write anything, that's fine. If you don't want to write on the target language, just write in English, or it's completely fine. This doesn't count, because they are always thinking, oh, does it count towards my grade? No, it doesn't. Don't worry. So it's entirely, up to them. And that already shows you like something. So it's all about, getting to know your students. So if they have left it blank, that would say something. You might, after you've met the students for like, after a few weeks, you might say, well, do you want to stay for like 5 minutes during break and you want to fill it in, or no, you can just move on, that's fine. It's not like compulsory, it's just to like an icebreaker sort of, but for me, it gives me a lot of information. There was also another one.
Yeah, so there's one about using PowerPoint and how you manage to kind of do all of that. There's Doug asking, do you use a PowerPoint for every lesson, and how do you manage to do that? I don't know about you, Veronica, but I tend to have what I call my master PowerPoint. And so every time I create a good slide that can be reused, I just keep it in one PowerPoint, and then when I'm looking to make a new lesson or session, I just start with that and just drag over the slides I need and adapt them for that particular session. That's
exactly. Yeah, and you'll be, you know, just wait and see what your school does. In some schools you might have like, you know, lessons like it's for every teachers, like a bank of resources, and then you just adapt it to your classrooms. But yeah, I always like to have it the same with like grammar sheets or anything. I have like a folder called like resources, and then I would just put grammar and then present tense or whatever, and then, you know, slides. If your school has got a certain any like pro form or anything that you need to use, then I would just keep it like the master copy. And there was another question here. Cannot see the chat. Let's see. Something about year 7. It was from Coralie. Do you spend more time on routines more than one lesson with year 7? I just spent, the thing is, I don't have too many routines. The expectations in my school are the same for every single subject. So the routines is, I think it just goes with every single year group. Some year 11 students still don't, you know, decide not to follow their routine of having their equipment ready, because they just want to waste lesson time. So yes, I repeat it on a daily basis until they remember. And sometimes students tell you, well, Miss, you already taught us. Yes, but you need to remember it. So yes, I repeat the routines with every single year group, but I would only, I remember the other question. It was about, you know, leaving maybe the target language or the teaching for the second week. I just do lessons 1, 2, and 3. So lesson 1 would be the introduction. Lesson 2 would be getting on and starting, like, you know, preparing the books and starting with the first unit. And then the third lesson would be an actual like lesson already. So for the second lesson, at the end of it, there will be an introduction to unit 1. And something I like to do in the books is folding the first page in half. So I would open the book, and then the first page I would fold it in half, and then put the unit, like unit 1, family and friends, for example, in the target language. And then they would have it like a sleeve for the units. So they would have it split. So that when it comes to unit 2, for example, for GCSE technology, then they would have, you know, they would know how many pages it, but it's entirely up to you how you like to organize. As I said, every single teacher is different.
Okay, well, that's great. Thanks everyone for joining in and having your interesting questions and having your photo taken as well. Helen, anything else you'd like to say just now?
No, just again, thank you to everybody who's joined in, and it's lovely to have seen Veronica again. I did say perhaps you might share one of your pictures of your wedding if you wanted to at the end, Veronica, because they're lovely, lovely pictures. Absolutely great to have you, and lovely to have all of the people joining in, wasn't it, on the chat?
Very good.
So, and thank you, Charlie, for the link to that wonderful lime green. Only 7 left, so I don't know if other people have clicked.
It's dirt cheap. It's just, and it's foldable, and you know, and it's little, which is, I love little things.
Wonderful, yeah. So thank you, and thank you, Stephen, for bringing it all together. Great.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Great to see
everybody. Tie.
See you on Thursday, third Thursday, this time the 16th, isn't it?
But the second Thursday, yeah, second Thursday this time, but
almost a tongue twister. Third Thursday. Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Okay then. Bye.
Bye. Thank you ever so much,
Bye.
Veronica.
Thank you,
Veronica. Amazing.
Should we sing a little, Steve? Would you all be happy to sing a little belated happy birthday song for Stephen for yesterday?
oh yes, we should have done this earlier. So, would you like to give us a note, Judith, or shall I?
No, please, you do. You're
1, 2. Happy birthday
to you.
Happy birthday.
Happy City.
Happy birthday,
Happy Stephen.
And the dog's there as
Oh
well.
gosh.
Yeah, he loves singing.
I thought that was a comment on our singing then. Who let the dogs out? Who? Oh, Helen, we were still recording that.
Also,
Oh,
we
yes.
are. Okay, let's
Do not
that.
send that out to the public.
I shall now stop the recording. 1, 2, 3. Go. Stop.